Our next story is about people who give their time, effort, and sometimes their lives to protect the rest of us and our homes and property. But their numbers keep on shrinking. When an emergency call goes out, volunteers are the first to respond. The National Volunteer Fire Council says volunteers make up 74% of America's fire and rescue services. They say it would cost taxpayers more than $37 billion a year to replace them with full-time firefighters. Roman Gray has been spending some time with these lifesavers, who are keeping up the good fight.
When fighting fires, first response men and women face a lot of challenges. Moments of stress, confusion, and disorientation.
Where are you? Where are you? Right this way. Gotcha? Yeah.
There are about 2,600 volunteer firefighters in Onandaga County. Chet Fritz is training Syracuse and Liverpool firefighters in this exercise. He teaches both career and volunteer firefighters basic search and rescue techniques.
You're going to a house you've never been in before, so you have to get your orientation from the wall. You have to keep your arm on the wall. You have to search with your tool because that's an extension of your hand, and that's what it's about.
Even training can be dangerous. In February of 2002, a deputy fire chief from Onandaga County went to prison for the deaths of one of his volunteers during a training exercise. According to U.S. Fire Administration, 6% of firefighter deaths in the last decade happened during training. This is higher than the decade before. The administration says physical fitness, equipment drills, and live fire exercises are the leading types of training that result in death.
Search, you go through 3-4 rooms, your bell rings like his did, and you bail out, you left this poor guy right here.
Try to teach them to get out safely also, because that's the priority. Everybody goes home.
And what's the first priority in a fire? Yourself. The second one is your partner or another firefighter.
Bob Schatt is in his 11th year of firefighting. He says training helps, but it's not the same as a real thing.
Training just gives you the basics to get through stuff. Sometimes when you're actually on a call doing something, your training, the knowledge helps a little bit, but it's actually doing all the hands-on stuff. Sometimes you just need to adapt to the situation. Sometimes you can't do it the way they train you. You have to find a different way to do it.
On any given call, firefighters might have to witness difficult situations. Schatt says some things are harder to see than others.
Just any calls that involve kids for any of the firefighters that have families and kids. When you get kids, it kind of hits home.
It hits home when a fellow firefighter is injured or killed. In March of 2002, 2 firefighters died when they fell through the floor of a burning house in Poppy.
All right, this room's clear.
There are lots of risks when doing this type of work. For Fritz, it's a matter of duty.
Community service is the rent you pay for living somewhere.
But others just like doing it. In fact, about 100 volunteers work with Liverpool alone. Corey Reynolds also volunteers for the Civil Air Patrol. He signed up for the fire team 3 days ago.
It's definitely interesting. I mean, I didn't even think about some of the kind of stuff that's going on, the way they're searching, what methods they're using, you know, how to do it, and basic stuff like he was out here explaining how to hold the Halligan bar so your hand doesn't get squished. I would never have thought of something like that.
And you're holding it, you put your weight on it, or somebody falls on you.
David Hurley joined about the same time as Reynolds. Volunteering for the fire department runs in his family.
My brother was a firefighter for 5 years, so I was curious. So I decided to try it out for size.
Reginald Chester was a district fire chief back in the 70s. From experience, he knows younger men and women need that extra time to get used to the job. He says a new volunteer spends about a year just observing.
Years ago, we would fight a fire from the outside. Now, the firemen are right inside.
Firefighters like Chester bring years of knowledge and experience to the scene. However, there comes a point in their career when they have to return to the sidelines. But there's still a place for them on the team.
All the people that have been here 40, 50 years that are still doing, they're our fire police now, which means they stand on the road and direct traffic. They can't go inside anymore, but they can participate in directing traffic and helping the public that way.
One of these is Pops. John Lewis has been a volunteer for 51 years. Back in his younger days, he used to fight fires head on, but he realizes those days are long gone.
You have to admit to yourself, well, I guess I did it, but I can't do it anymore. So things change, and sometimes you don't like the changes, but sometimes you have to remember, well, when you were an active fireman and the older people, when you were there, went through the same thing, you know, the changes. Sometimes you don't like the changes, but it's all for the best.
Firefighters sacrifice a lot. They know the people they serve, and they serve them in more ways than one.
We have like pancake breakfasts for the public, and we have a fundraiser once a year called the Sock Hop. That's what we're here for. The public who looks for our help from anywhere, from getting a cat from a tree to a drain pipe, you name it. They call the fire department.
It's for all of them. It's a fantastic job what they do.
We really appreciate the fire department, the way you guys lay your lives on the line all the time. Very important. We really appreciate the job you do, and we'd be in trouble without you.
It's a good get together. It's a good to support the guys that are doing the work.
Emergency medical rescue calls top the list of Liverpool's run types. The number of calls continues to increase, but the number of volunteers keeps falling. The county coordinator says the current number of volunteers, 2,600, is down from more than 4,000 10 years ago. Lost manufacturing jobs and a tough economy get a lot of the blame.
Volunteers are very important to us because that's how we protect the public. Now, once we get them in, we have to retain them. The retention of them is a tough thing because all the hours of training they have to give right off the bat.
With an increasing workload, departments in DeWitt, Fayetteville, and Manlius have begun integrating full-time firefighters into their workforce. But Liverpool is an all-volunteer fire team. They still have to balance volunteer work, jobs, and a life. The first thing Chief Laux tells his new volunteers is that the family comes first, both at home and at the station.
But when the bell hits, we all work as a family. When the siren goes off, when we come down here, we're a family. We work together because you have to depend on the next person next to you. It's very important. So if you had a problem with somebody, you have to lay that outside the differences to come in here and do your job.
Reginald Chester served in the Army during World War II. He says volunteering in a fire department reminds him of his military service. But the hardest thing to face doesn't get easier with experience.
Seeing death, that always reminds you. You always have that in your mind. I've come across a few when I was chief, but you just say that's your job to do, stuff like that. You don't never forget them. It's pretty much like military.
You never know what's going to happen, or what happens the next time the bell hits. You never know. Every time's a new adventure, per se.
150 firefighters rushed to the scene on Vine Street in Liverpool around 6 o'clock.
Heavy fire in the basement apartment. The crews got in there and knocked it down.
The first priority for firefighters was residents of the Century apartment complex.
I came home from the grocery store and
every call you go on there is different. There's not one call to say.
This is Roman Gray reporting for Operation 490.